All right. By the way, 46.3 million people as of last week on food stamps. And both of you brought up the SNAP program. The Farm Bill obviously has much more to do, includes a lot more than just farm legislation. Nutrition now accounts for 80% of the funding of the Farm Bill.
It's 83.
Okay, why not separate the two and pass one bill for ag and one for nutrition?
Well, you may not get a majority to pass Farm Bill. I indicated the red line of my colleagues across the aisle is basically nutrition and food stamps, 1 out of 6. Where I am troubled is that I think that we could certainly do a better job of trying to reform. I don't know if reform is the right word, but I'll say reform. With regards to the SNAP program, more especially in regards to eligibility, all this advertising, paying states for people to sign up more folks. I think the Department of Agriculture has an outstanding outreach program. Goodness knows you do not want anybody going hungry in this country given the economic times we're going through. But as I took a look at what we did in '96 and then you try to fast forward to where we are now, I think there's too much of a feeling that 1 out of 6 people on food stamps is a good thing. I don't think so. I'd sure aim for 1 out of 10 and then keep it going the other way if we could. Of course, a lot of that would depend on economic recovery. But today, if you're eligible for any other federal program of assistance, the Trade Assistance Act, for instance, as a result of the trade agreements that were finally signed. And if you're eligible for that, bang, you're eligible for food stamps regardless of your circumstance. I mean, I really think we ought to take a hard look at that. I think the House started to do that, but again, if it came back over to the Senate, those votes would not be there. So that's just a given politically in terms of counting the votes. I suppose I could draw other allegories that what's in the bill that cause other people heartburn or other people think we ought to do it better. But we were able to come together. We passed that farm bill in 2.5 days. That's a record. We passed it out of committee in about 4 hours. That's a record. And I think those of us on the committee understood what's at stake here. And also the livestock assistance program, the disaster assistance. I know people don't want an extension. I would prefer not an extension. Dan said a short time, all that does is put it down to the 11th hour, 59th minute, and maybe a lame duck. I'm not sure that's the best way to handle it. I think legislating in a lame duck is not preferable if you can avoid it. If there were an extension, I would hope that it would be 6 months. At least there'd be some certainty out there. As one farmer, Dan, came up to me and during the hearing in Wichita, and he said, "Pat, I don't care what you do to me, just let me know." And so that lack of certainty is the thing that's really hurting us. And you may be throwing away the disaster assistance unless you do extend the farm bill. I don't know. We're going to press ahead. We've been meeting all this month, staff on from every ranking member, every chairman on either side of the aisle, trying to work something out. Have not been successful. So we'll keep trying.
I think to answer your question, historically, Senator Dole, Senator Humphrey, McGovern, and others determined that the best way to keep the farm programs alive and viable was to tie them to nutrition programs. And for years, it's been a great outlet for a lot of farm products in this country. And so that coalition's been responsible in large part for passing farm bills over the years. Because remember that in the House of Representatives, only 1 in 5 members come from districts with very much farm production. 4 out of 5 are in districts that have none. So, politics is the art of the possible. You got to pull things together, do the best that you possibly can. And I think if you split them apart, I doubt you'd get it passed, or if you got it passed, it'd probably look like a shell of itself. Because, right now, if you read the general mainstream press, there's a big Time magazine this week talks about government subsidies, how we are subsidized everywhere in our society. Some of the subsidies are good, like road building. I think bridge building is a good subsidy, but a heavy part of it is on agriculture and food and farm subsidies. So I think that if you separated it out, you'd have real difficulty getting a bill passed myself. Okay. And plus, the truth of the matter is that, as Pat said, is that the food stamp program is largely a function of employment. And most of the people on food stamps are working families with children. So, it's really hard for people now to get jobs in this country. And it's just a different world than it was 20 or 30 years ago. I mean, there are some jobs available, obviously, but food stamps is largely a function of that.
By the way, you alluded to it earlier, or Pat did, Dan. You were in Charlotte for the Democratic National Convention, and Greg Akagi fixed me up with an article that was written by Jerry Hagstrom. Yeah, you were on a program with Secretary Vilsack, and you said that you were envious that he is secretary when farmers are earning such high prices and incomes, and you were quoted as saying, "You are the greatest agriculture secretary ever." We thought you were the greatest ag secretary.
I did too, but I couldn't say that when I was talking myself. All right. No, I would say this. Listen, this is not the easiest job in the world, and I think he's done a good job. I mean, look, we have a terrible drought situation, so as Pat reminds me whenever he can, one of the reasons we have high prices is because of bad weather conditions. But we do have the highest farm income in history. We do have the highest farm exports in history. So overall, we're in better times than we've been for a long time if you're able to participate in those good times. And so, I recognize that. But thank goodness for the crop insurance program that we have, which was part of earlier farm bills, because without that, things would be in really deep trouble.
Well, the greatest Secretary of Agriculture of all time. I thought, okay, I don't know, for a president who's able to lower the ocean levels and, cool the planet, certainly, if you want to give him credit for farm prices, that'd be an easy task. And I just wish he hadn't done it with a drought. I would, maybe you could call him and have him, make it rain or something. What do you think?
I probably could do that easier than he could, to be honest with you.
All right.